Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about mastering marketing briefs and taking a deep dive into effective briefing. And I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. We're going to take a look at what they are, what different kinds of briefs there are, why they're important, some of the things that often go wrong with briefing and some of the challenges that both marketers and also agencies or creatives can face with briefing. A bit of a look at some industry stats. So there's been some research done in recent times about what goes wrong with briefing and the challenges. And then we'll close out by taking a look at the role of technology and how technology can really help you to streamline your briefing processes. A little bit about me and a little bit about Admation before we get started. So my name is Margaret Foley and I am the Chief Customer Officer here at Simple Marketing Solutions. I am a marketing technology or marketing operations technology and business process expert. I've been in the marketing operations technology field for many years now. Simple Admation is the leading solution for marketing project management, collaboration, and approvals. And importantly, it's been designed specifically for marketing teams, as well as to help the process between in-house studios and agencies. Simple Admation is a Melbourne-born and bred business, and we've been solving marketing operations problems for over 20 years. Simple Admation can be used either for an end-to-end process solution or modular solutions, all the way from online briefing, which we'll talk about today, all the way through marketing resource management, approvals, and all the way through into the asset lifecycle management process, including DAM. A lot of what we're going to talk about today, we've learned from working with some incredible organisations who are our customers here at Simple. So with these organisations, we are helping them to solve their marketing operations challenges, specifically around briefing, project management, and approvals. And we're going to share with you some of what we've learned from them today. The first question, I guess, to get really clear about is, what are briefs? We see so many different kinds of briefs, and they're all called something a little bit different depending on your organisation and the purpose that your briefs are there to serve. So they may be called a creative brief, a campaign brief, task briefs, digital briefs. There are so many different types. What's core and common to every brief, though, is they all have the same purpose. And that purpose is really to provide the correct information to enable a designer, a copywriter, or another creative resource to produce a deliverable or a series of deliverables that meet the briefer's requirements. Now, something that's changed a little bit in the marketing landscape over recent years is that it's important to understand that not all briefs are submitted by marketers. And oftentimes we've got other stakeholders in our businesses. It might be the product team or the sales team, or even external partners who are submitting briefs into us. And so they aren't maybe as familiar with what we need to know as marketers or as a creative team in order to help them out. So the end-to-end process of marketing is really how we take a great brief, and a great brief can turn what's a good idea into a brilliant outcome at the end. So as we work our way through ideation, it turns into briefing, and then we move into production. We're looking at the brief being submitted as step one in our process, which is not always as linear as this diagram would suggest. But what we see here is that the brief being submitted kicks off then our series of our versions or our rounds of amends into then our different stages of approval that we might need to, and then finally our campaign is out into market. But it all starts with a great brief. There's been some research done in the last couple of years about briefing from both the perspective of marketers and also creative agencies. And this data comes from an organisation called Better Briefs and their top line global report, where you can download this in full. But I thought I'd take a few snapshots of the data that they've pulled together on quite a comprehensive report. Look, the summary is that briefing is hard, and everybody can agree on that. So we can see that more than 80% of marketers and 80% of creative agencies, which is who they surveyed, agreed that writing briefs can be hard. But that was about where the agreement ended. And what we then discovered through this research that they've provided is that most marketers think that they're really good at writing briefs. So 80% of marketers said, I consider myself really good at writing briefs. Yet only 10% of agencies agreed. And again, almost 80% of marketers thought that the briefs that they provided really good, clear strategic direction, but only 5% of agencies agreed. So there's a pretty big disconnect there between marketers going, yeah, I write amazing briefs, and the agencies kind of going, what are we supposed to do with this? There were some missing ingredients from these marketing briefs that were coming through. And according to the creative agencies, these were the top 4 things that were mostly missing. And I guess it's the top 2 there, which is about really clear objectives or outcomes and having a really clear strategy or problem defined. And we're going to talk about why that's important in a moment. The other thing that was really interesting, but maybe not surprising, is that so many changes happened after the initial brief was put in. So 90% of marketers, 9 out of 10 marketers, admitted that they changed their briefs after they briefed them in. And we're seeing there that on average about 70% of briefs are rebriefed. So that's a lot of change. So we could ask the question, how can we get our briefs better first time round so that we've got less of this change that's happening on the way through? Now, everybody understood the cost of getting it wrong. So if I'm having to rebrief, what's the flow-on impact of that rebrief? And the most obvious one was obviously time being lost or wasted, which can then translate into added cost and a flow-on impact into how we're collaborating and cooperating together, right through to, maybe we're just not getting the business outcomes that we're hoping for. The other stat that was there was that poor briefs end up wasting money. So it's estimated that 1/3 of marketing budgets are wasted on poor briefs and misdirected work. That's a lot. And one of the biggest challenges that I hear marketing leaders sharing with me is how their budgets are being cut. They're being asked to do so much more with less money or less resources. If we could make sure that our briefs were better and we were wasting less money and less time and less resources on rebriefing, then maybe that could be the difference. So for more information or a full copy of that report, please do visit betterbriefs.com and you'll be able to download a copy of that full report. Let's take a look now at some of the ingredients of a good brief. We talk about the 5 W's of briefing, and let's take a look at what they are. So the first W is who. Who are we talking to? Who is our target market, that demographic that we really want to go after, or our ideal client, whatever the terminology is that you use inside of your organization. Perhaps here we're drilling down into age brackets of our target market. Perhaps there is individual income, household income that we're looking for. Maybe it's a location. Perhaps we're talking about people that live in capital cities or only in a particular state or only in regional areas. Often what we see is that it's a combination of multiple different demographic factors that make up our target market. Our next W is around why. So why should they care? Why should our target market care about our message and what we're trying to put out? So we want to focus on things such as what benefits do they stand to gain? What losses are they trying to avoid? Really, this is all about what's in it for them. Why should they care? And then what do we want to achieve? So what is the action perhaps that we want our target audience to take? Are we trying to achieve that we're looking to acquire new clients? This is a campaign where we're looking to retain existing ones. Perhaps it's an exercise in brand awareness or consideration. Maybe our call to action is to generate inquiries to a call center, to have people visiting a website, downloading a brochure, buying a product. So be very clear on what we're trying to achieve. The next W is when. When do we want to do it? Perhaps we have a campaign that is seasonal. Perhaps it is Christmas or winter, spring racing carnival. So it has very clear in-market and out-of-market dates. If we are time-bound with our campaign, are we providing enough lead time to get the work done? Some of the briefs that we see, our marketing teams or our creative teams will actually provide information to the briefer to say our lead time on this type of campaign or this type of request is at least 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, whatever that turnaround might be. So are we giving enough lead time to get the work done? Or perhaps this is an always on campaign and when do we want to go to market? with it. The last of our W's is where. Where do we want to do it? So this is where we're considering our channels to market. Again, going back to predominantly our target market, where do we find them? So are we taking this to social platforms? Are we going into paid media, TV, radio, etc., out of home sponsorship, other, or often what we obviously see is a combination of all of the above. So if you can get very clear about each of these W's and put information together, then you're on your way to actually providing a good brief. So some of the other elements of a good brief, some of these we'll cover again. So clearly defined goals and outcomes. Nobody goes in and writes a brief just going, I'd like to do something sometime to somebody. That's not what this is about. So it's how do I have clearly defined goals and outcomes? These are really important as well because after our campaign comes out of market, we want to maybe sit down and do a PIR and think about, was this successful? So our measures of success or our goals or our desired outcomes need to be articulated at the start so we can measure it later on and say, did we actually achieve what it was that we set out to achieve? Have we got our clearly defined target market and ideal customer? Can we articulate what's in it for them? We know our dates or our when we're going to want to do it. Something else that's really important to consider, and go and find this information as part of the briefing process, and ideally before you submit the brief, is what data, insights, or market research can you find or do you have that supports your hypotheses about this campaign? So can we go and see that taking this campaign to this target market via these channels with this messaging, what evidence do we have to suggest that this is likely to be appropriate and successful? Well-written and concise requirements. I often hear from marketers or from creatives that they may receive a brief from a marketer that is a little bit like a small edition of War and Peace. So very wordy, very lengthy. It's very clear that some marketers have gotten together and put together a really well-considered brief with lots of information. But at the end of it, the designer is still kind of going, I don't really know what it is that they're asking me to do. So is my brief well-written and concise so that somebody's going to be able to pick it up and go, I got it. I know what they're asking me to do here. The other part about briefing is, does it have both a realistic and approved budget? Are we trying to do an awful lot with no budget? Has the budget been approved? That's an important question to ask before people start working on it, especially if we're outsourcing this to an agency. And importantly, does this brief align with our business strategy? So are we being strategic with it? What does it align with? Or are we being quite tactical with this? So if we can write a great brief, what are some of the benefits of it? We've identified what are the pitfalls of a poorly written brief. So what's the upside of a good brief? Ultimately, good briefing gets us better creative sooner, which is a great outcome for everybody involved. So how do we get better creative sooner? We do this because a great brief is going to mean that we've got less rounds of concepting, less amends or versions, whatever the terminology is that you use. So we're going back and we're having to redo this work less often. Less rounds of amends or versions can often result in, if you're outsourcing to an agency, reduced agency fees, so we're not having overages. Perhaps your agency contract allows for 2 rounds of amends, and suddenly we're finding ourselves at version 4 or version 5. Now, even if you're not outsourcing to an agency and there's not a risk of them sending you an invoice for an overrun and you've got an in-house studio team, it's equally as important to be as respectful of their time and resources by making sure we're giving our in-house team a really good brief. Overall, it results in improved productivity and efficiency for everybody across the board. So when we think of that process from, hey, I'm submitting a brief to it's in market, and we think of all the different people involved in that process, including our approvers who really don't want to see this version 5 coming back around for them to look at again. We want to boost productivity and efficiency for everybody. That results in faster go-to-market or turnaround times because less versions, less approvals, less bottlenecks means we can get our content out the door faster. We've got improved collaboration and communication, so everyone's on the same page, and that can only be a good thing across the board. Ultimately as well, if we're creating better creative, better campaigns and we're doing it sooner, it's going to result in better business outcomes for everybody. Let's take a look now at the role that technology can play in helping us with good briefing. So what do we often see? Often when organisations first come and chat to us here at Admation, we see one of these 5 things normally, which is that marketers or product teams are getting together and they're having a group meeting or a brainstorming session, and the outcome of that is some notes that we've all agreed on, and we literally copy and paste them, and somehow we send them to our agency or we send them to our creative team. We see briefs being received via Slack or Teams chat. Hey, I just need this, and if you could do it by next week, that'd be awesome, thanks. Or we see that in an email instead of a Teams chat. Some organisations have evolved along a little way, and they are using some kind of system or process. The most common one we see might be something such as Jira being used. Often Jira comes about because the marketing team or the in-house agency organisation went to their IT team and said, hey, we need a tool. And IT said, oh, hey, we use Jira for tickets. You guys can use it too. It's better than nothing, let me say. The other thing that we often see is simply Word documents being written, co-authored by multiple people. There may be a template that goes with that, oftentimes not. Or we do sometimes see a PDF template, which at least does give some direction as to the information that is required. But what are the problems with these systems of briefing? It's often inconsistent and ad hoc, which is problematic. It's often missing information because it's very, very difficult to make something mandatory. And if you are the agency or you are the traffic manager of the in-house studio team, you know that there are certain things that you've just got to know about before you can start doing anything. So if you're not receiving even the bare minimum, then you know you're going to have to push back and ask for more information. These requests can also get lost in emails and old chat threads and be hard to find. There's no visibility then for scheduling, for resource management, for reporting. And again, if you are in a studio lead or traffic manager role, it's really important for you to be able to see all of the requests that you've got, who's working on what capacity are we at, when are things going to be due, and manage your team and deadlines according to that. Oftentimes, because we don't have a proper system or process or visibility, our briefing ends up being quite tactical and not very strategic. And even if we do have a ticketing system, it's usually not designed for creative or marketing project management to really include that full collaboration, versions, markups, and approvals, and then to follow through into the asset lifecycle management. Instead of those, what could we do instead? And this is where we come in and we take those organisations from all of that chaos and dysfunction and we move them into a system and streamline processes through online briefing forms. Now, as we said at the outset, there can be all sorts of different briefing forms for whatever process it is that you're looking to bring online. And we also know that oftentimes briefs don't exist on their own. What do I mean by that? It may be that we've got an overarching campaign. So it might be our Spring Racing Carnival campaign, which goes over a period of a couple of months. And so we might have a campaign brief that captures the whole Spring Racing Carnival initiative. And then underneath that, there's multiple different projects or activations that we're working on. But if I want to see, show me all of the projects, all of the briefs, all of the tasks that we are working on that relate to the Spring Racing Carnival, I've got it structured in such a way that I can see individual level or I can see a rolled up view of it. Online briefing forms also can enable us to have briefs that have an approval workflow added to them. Now, this might not be relevant on something such as a task brief where I just need to get a web banner updated. But if I'm doing quite a large campaign or an integrated campaign, or particularly if we are going into paid media and there is money being spent or a budget that's been approved, then we can apply an approval workflow to that brief, but we don't want to hold up the task brief to get that web banner updated. We can have our briefs be routed directly to specific users, so we're looping in the right people at the right time and giving them the visibility that they need to so that they can start collaborating early enough. How do we take a brief and have it automatically be converted into a project, into specific tasks and deliverables, so that we're not having to take a brief that we've received and then manually recreate that into a dozen different tickets or requests, for example? And importantly, having mandatory fields that must be completed. So you've got to give this information to the agency or to the creative team in order to be able to submit your request. So as I said, we can create different kinds of briefs for different types of activities or requests. It's important as well, particularly for our larger briefs, it might be our campaign brief, that we can save it, come back and work on it later on, work on it collaboratively, because often those bigger briefs are not something that we work on in isolation for ourselves. It's important as well that we utilize what we call drop-down boxes or select value fields to enable filtering and reporting. And I'm going to touch on that more deeply in a moment. Our briefs should also include date fields. So let's get really specific about our date fields, not just our in and out of market dates, but when do I need the first draft of artwork by? When does something need to get to the copywriters by, etc. We can also use our date fields to enable calendar views. So how do we visualize what we've got on, and also to be able to trigger alerts and reminders from it as well. We also want to be able to enable assigning briefs or tasks to users. So perhaps I want to assign this to an agency or to a designer and have them be able to be notified. And how can we then integrate if we are using other systems inside of our MarTech stack where it's appropriate and possible? How can we integrate with those existing systems? When my team are working with clients to, I guess, reimagine what great briefing could look like, it's not just about taking a PDF or a Word document and turning it into an online form. That's only part of the process. The other really important part that we want to think about is how do we want to use this data later on? And what do I mean by that? So I want you to consider, how will I need to be able to report on briefing later on down the track so that I make sure that I design my online brief in a way that enables me to get the data and the insights out again. So some examples of that might be, are we being asked to report on how many briefs have we worked on for a particular brand, a particular business unit, a particular product? Let's look at our briefs or our work that we've done for a particular demographic. So when we're building a brief, if we want to be able to report on it, filter by it, and really, really dive down into the data, it's important that we construct the fields in our brief to accommodate that. So this is where we are recommending that instead of lots of free text fields and letting people kind of just put in whatever they want to, that's me typing, that we're instead thinking of fixed value fields. So do we have a list of brands? Do we have a list of business units or cost centers? If we're talking about demographics, do we have specific age brackets? Do we have specific regions that we refer to, etc.? And so instead of leaving it to people to type that in, where we all might think of something a little bit different, it might get misspelt, instead we're presenting our briefers with a series of boxes or values that they can just select from, that we can report on and filter on later on. It is important that we build in time and date fields in there. As I said before, we can use that for our data and our visualization as well. We can look back and say, show me all the briefs that we did for this particular brand, this particular demographic during this 6-month period of time, and get really specific about it. Not having user fields in here, so this is other people who might be in the platform with us, being able to mention them, add them in, CC them in on things, BCC them in on approvals, etc. The other thing that we recommend is keeping free text fields. So this is where I can just type whatever I want to, limited to when words are the best option. What do I mean by that? Because aren't words always the best option? Words are the best option if we can't put what we're trying to ask for into categories. So if we possibly can I put it into a category or a select box? If not, this is where we're really doing the describing of the outcomes that we're looking for. If we are going to have an online form with free text fields in it, then our recommendation is to make sure that they're what we call rich text enabled. So this means that I can format, I can bold, I can highlight, I can underline, I can have bullet points, I can paste links, I can paste images, I can put emojis, I can put anything I want to. So that it's almost like everything I could do in a Word document, I can do inside my brief. That also helps when we're engaging users in this new process that we might be rolling out. It feels really familiar to them as well. So that's what we say. When you're designing a brief, We really want you to think about how you're going to use the data in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months' time. So if you would like a little bit more information, because we've really only scratched the surface of briefing, and as I said at the outset, it's different for every organisation. We do have a free briefing template, which we can send you the link that you can download. So please do get in contact with me if you would like that. If you'd like to see online briefing in action and how it can help you then link through into project management, approvals, and asset lifecycle management, we'd love to take you through a demo of Admation. So please do reach out to me for that. If you've currently got a brief, so if you've got a Word document or a Jira ticket or a PDF and you'd love to see what that could look like in an online brief, then please do send it to me and we can create an example for you so you can see what a better brief could look like inside of Admation for your team. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've learned a little more about what to consider when you are creating briefs for your organisation. And if you would like any more information or you have any queries, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.